Casper, good morning. How are you? Hope all is well. It's good to see you. Thanks for making time this morning to talk a little bit about, kind of customer retention, the digital experience, and engaging in this difficult economy. Valtech has been around for quite some time and has a real expertise, in our ecosystem and provides a tremendous amount of value to brands, retailers, and manufacturers. That's exactly why we're doing this. This is why we started the Annex Cloud kind of market movers video chat series, is to be proactive and get some keen insight in front of brands and retailers and manufacturers so that they can find real solutions to help them get through this difficult time. So thanks again for joining us. And I thought it'd be great to just kind of kick this off and talk a little bit about, what we've heard over the last few weeks. As you know, we've been relentless about making sure that people understand that customer retention is just very critical, in this time period. And it should be critical no matter what you're doing, because once you've worked so hard to retain customers, you want to keep them because you don't have to keep feeding the well all the time, even though that's a core part of your business as the economy gets better. But it's really important that you maintain these relationships. So we'll talk about that. Let me start with a quote. We have a client called MacKenzie-Childs who's been with us for quite some time. And we're talking to a lot of our clients to help them get through this and identifying strategies and tactics to help them get through this economy. But their CMO, Larry Shaw, actually told us, this is verbatim, and he said we can use this quote. If we had to cut down to 2 to 3 services that we pay for, loyalty would be the one that we would want to keep. So I thought that just underscores exactly why you and I are here today to talk about this and make sure that we're all pressing the right buttons. But I'd love to kind of get your perspective on, kind of what is Valtech doing now, given this kind of new normal, especially around customer retention. And we'll talk about digital experience as we go forward. But let's zero in on that right now and find out how you guys are bringing this to the market with clients and prospects. I'd love to get your perspective on that as well.
Totally, and thank you so much for having me. So he's spot on. I just want to say that up front, I totally agree with that statement. And think about it this way, that loyalty is basically the level of equity that sits in the relationship between a consumer and a brand. And obviously increasing that equity creates retention, that creates a reason for a consumer to stick around. The typical tactics or strategies that we see to increasing that equity is loyalty, which is of course the mechanics of incentives. It's the mechanics of re-engagements and giving people or giving consumers a way of approaching a brand and just engaging with the brand. The other approach we see is definitely through content strategy, like the tone of voice, just the actual moments where you deliver certain pieces of content and how that kind of maps back to the customer journeys and what type of content actually hits them when we're talking about retention and getting into that advocacy state.
Sure. You mentioned a critical part of that customer journey. Loyalty is a critical touch point, in that customer journey. So when you're talking to brands and retailers and manufacturers who are interested in, and you've seen this, right? You've seen a tremendous amount of groundswell activity around digital now, like we've never seen before, right? Because everybody has to stay home. Everything's taking place online. Now there's this great big surge. In fact, I think Visa just reported unprecedented global e-commerce volume than ever before because of the COVID-19 crisis. But when you think about the customer journey and you think about where Valtech is recommending what that needs to be, the best practices, the optimization around that, can you kind of highlight what that looks like, kind of that customer engagement model, the actual journey and those critical touch points? Obviously loyalty plays a critical role, but just kind of flow through as to what that looks like in today's environment as you're talking to brands and prospects and clients as to what that needs to look like. I think that would be really important for people to really understand in this new normal.
Yeah, no, certainly. And I think it's worth just thinking about how manufacturers and actual retail, as an example, are fundamentally different. One of the challenges that we see with manufacturers is that they have no relationships with the consumers of their products. They're sitting with a typical distribution model in between those consumers and themselves as the supply of the actual products, meaning they have no direct to consumer strategy. And of course, that's a lot of the work that we're doing with big manufacturers out there to make sure that they can actually approach and engage with the consumers directly to start that culture of feedback, to start that culture of conversation instead of it always going through the point of retail, going through mom and pops, going through like distribution channels. So that's definitely for manufacturers something that needs to be taken very seriously. Going direct to consumer is a big adventure. Like there are many different complexities in doing it, but it is certainly something manufacturers these days need to look at. And I think time to market, just given the current like situation of the economics, are incredibly critical for manufacturers to kind of get that opportunity of engaging directly. On the other hand, when we're talking about retail, a lot of the experiences that we've seen to date has been very much focused around like the awareness, the decision, the conversion, and then you're leaving it at that, because that's how people have seen like e-commerce playing a vital role so far. Where we're seeing it definitely moving is like what happens post-conversion. Like what are we doing to re-engage our people? What are we doing in order to get people back into our funnel and kind of convert with us once again? And that's where we see loyalty programs. That's where we see marketing automation, basically entire notion of like re-engaging and kind of being top of mind and giving folks a reason to stick around and like be interested in us as a brand and kind of bringing them back into the fold. We certainly see that being key.
Sure. So a couple things is, as I see it, and I think you could add some perspective here as well, around kind of that content, right? What is the content and engagement process is now, critical more so than ever before, because you don't have the personal connective tissue that we're used to. Now, things are starting to open up a little bit, right? You're seeing that, Casper, with, gradually kind of a phased approach post-COVID. I think, you're starting to see more pickup and deliveries. I think, restaurants are starting to have to reconfigure their businesses a bit and understand, social distancing and how that's factored in, as well as, some of the different elements around logistics to keep everything sterile. But I think, the content piece online and the engagement part is pretty important, more so than ever before, because everybody's online. Can you describe, what your clients and prospects should be looking at as it relates to, having real meaningful content and that touches a real relevancy with respect to the shopping behavior, the engagement, the customer experience? I think that would be helpful for people to understand, from your expertise as to how you bring all that together.
Yeah, totally. So if you think about it post-conversion, the state of mind for a consumer is really, how do I get as much value out of the product that I just purchased? And that is what retail and manufacturers needs to help me understand. So it's the application of the purchase that I just made. When we look at, let's say, groceries, we're seeing a lot about like, how can these products or purchases actually help me change my lifestyle? Like, how can I help improve my body? How can I help improve my mental health by kind of like considering the benefits of the purchase that I just made? It means that I'm starting to like get different perspectives on the value of the product that I just purchased, instead of just thinking of it as being like a simple replenishment of whatever goods that I need for my home. And that is really how we see, like, for instance, retail being able to re-engage with their consumers and kind of creating that adoption or that more equity in the relationship to make sure that people come back for a reason and kind of do a repurchase.
Okay. Let's look at a couple market examples where big market brands like Target, like Macy's, like REI, sadly, J. Crew just, had some struggles and they filed for bankruptcy. And one of the things that stood out to me was that on the J. Crew side, is that, they lacked a really loyal customer base. And, that whole fashion apparel vertical is extraordinarily competitive. So you have to continually, stay up to date with latest trends and be able to adapt and be very agile in terms of meeting those demands. But in the absence of, I don't think they put a loyalty program in place until 2018. And that was a bit problematic now because it's called out that they didn't have a loyal customer base. So when you see companies like Macy's doubling down on loyalty and Target, scrapping their original loyalty program because it was undifferentiated, it was transactional in nature, and it didn't have any real meaning for the target guest. So they scrapped it and came up with Target Circle. and now they've got a huge momentum around that. Can you talk a little bit about kind of the verticals, say fashion, apparel, health and beauty, luxury goods, outdoor sports, and outdoors, whatever it may be? How should, kind of that verticalization, work as it relates to creating the optimal customer engagement, right? So when you see something happen in fashion apparel, what should brands and retailers be looking at now to remain very competitive, in that space, given this new normal?
Yeah. So I think and I honestly think that's across verticals, one of the key ingredients of a successful like customer retention strategy is to increase the barrier of change.
Yeah.
You need to make sure that I can't change as easily as I may have been able to in the past. Me just sitting with points on an account that I haven't really redeemed from or been rewarded from in the past is simply not enough these days. There needs to be some type of equity in the service that you provide to me. And as I'm seeing more and more reason for sticking around, I'm less likely to go astray. And I think that's the type of change that a Target implemented with the Target Circle, where it's moving away from a more traditional, you're earning points and you're getting benefits. It's becoming way more of a bonding mechanism than anything else. And honestly, that is what loyalty is about today. It's not just about me accruing a balance and kind of getting a slight discount on my next purchase. It's really about me using it in a day-to-day and an everyday situation. What we see, for instance, within digital grocery is that barrier of change is extremely low, because a lot of these digital grocery solutions that we're seeing today, like within specifically the grocery industry, basically are only relying on like the replenishment or my convenience for restocking my personal household needs as the barrier of change. It means like we did a research and a study where on average, it takes me 83 clicks to change from one provider to another, because that's the average amount of goods that I buy over a quarter. There is no other reason for me to stick around than that.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of groceries, digital groceries in particular, whether it's the Amazon Freshers, whether it's the Instacarts of the world, are seeing that now the market is starting to reopen because they're having a really hard time like re-engaging with their customers because that barrier of change has been too low. I simply do not have any reason to stick around. Yeah. And that means that a market shift might be coming up.
Yeah, I think that barrier of change is absolutely very relevant for today, more so than ever before. I keep thinking about when economic hardship takes place, which is, unemployment's off the chart, right? So people are now having to rethink, what happens with the dollar that they currently have and where can it be best applied. That creates, anxiety and uneasiness, and I think brands and manufacturers and retailers have to be really sensitive about, hey, there's that level of thinking now. Now people are more inclined to look at real value and cost because of that situation. And customer retention is this opportunity to create those experiences, what you're referring to, as opposed to, yeah, guess what? I had this really great loyalty program, get a bunch of points, get $5 off on your next purchase. It's more about the engagement around, all the opportunities of value that a good strategic loyalty program can bridge that gap. So I think that's really important.
And we really see it being that emotional connection that you're starting to create. Like, I'm not doubting myself as I'm re-engaging a brand. The worst situation you possibly can get into as a brand is the people are doubting the value of that relationship you have. And loyalty is, of course, like, again, one mechanism, but at the end of the day, it comes down to the emotional connection that I have. So even think about how retention can be amplified by thinking about social responsibility, by thinking about the service affinity that's associated to the service you're offering to the market. You need to stand out. You need to be different. Like, there are a lot of plays right now about food waste being like the unique character or unique characteristic of a service that's offered to the market that makes them stand out. And that means I'm way more competitive when people have an opinion. And those are the types of uniqueness you need to find, so you're not just one of many. And unfortunately, like you are saying, a loyalty program rooted in points and pure rewards, not having any type of like bonding or engagement mechanism assorted to it, is so last year. And everybody has it. And that's why Target and these other big players are starting to really like accelerate their focus on loyalty and retention, and it comes in and kind of becomes this experience or this emotional connection that you want to establish instead.
Yeah, well said, Casper, for sure. And when I think of, I love Amazon, but I'm not emotionally attached to Amazon. It's a great convenience for me, right? I get it. It's very frictionless. I understand it. But I pay for Prime. I want to own that service. I'm deeply invested, in that part of it because I want to get the value that I paid for. But if somebody has something else where I'm able to create some more value, I would absolutely leap in a second to go take a look at it. I'm not emotionally connected to Amazon. I love the frictionless shopping experience, but if you give me something else, I'm in, right? Give me something more value, more high perceived value, more connection. I want to look at those. So I think your comments are spot on for sure. Let's switch gears a little bit and talk about success, right? Let's talk about how do brands and manufacturers and retailers achieve, success now? So if they come to you, Casper, at Valtech, and they say, guess what? We're thinking about, recalibrating our business. We're having to change. We're having to pivot. We're having to shift resources. Casper, help us get through this. How are you guys providing some of that valuable strategic insight right now, to those prospects and clients around how do they achieve success in this kind of new normal from A to B, talking about their platform considerations, the digital experience. We've talked a lot about customer retention and loyalty, but what's that message right now from Valtech?
So what we go in and do first is, of course, to define success. And based on the market position that you have right now, like some see success in acquisition, some see success in increasing like the customer lifetime value. We typically right now see that it's about increasing the customer lifetime value, and that means you're stretching the active, the duration of activity that you see between consumer and brand. And that means the re-engagement is kind of working. So we see clients that are sitting with a low customer lifetime value getting incredibly high and great benefits from increasing it, because it means people are coming back and kind of continuing to generate the revenue as the individual they have. And the more customer lifetime value at the end of the day, the more loyalty you have to that brand. And that's really how we see it, look at it from a strategic point of view. Yeah, so we wrote it back in that KPI, and then we find the right tactics and strategies to kind of amplify it and increase it. And honestly, depending on whether you are a manufacturer, even in retail, what type of vertical or what type of a retail vendor or provider you are, those tactics are greatly different.
Okay. It would be safe to say, as part of that strategy, those key success metrics is now's the time, right, to take the appropriate action to properly surprise and delight and wow and keep making meaningful touch points with their current customers, and make sure that path is clear, for them to move forward in this kind of new normal, right? Is that fair to say? You look at the assets. So customer service should be spot on, should be fantastic. Your website should reflect kind of this new normal. So that content piece that we talked about should reflect, what it's about now in this kind of new market economy where there are significant challenges. Obviously, the value proposition, all that should be conveyed across all those assets, correct? That's what we're talking about now.
Yeah, absolutely. Like having one unified view and one unified voice across all the touch points that I have with the brand is extremely important. And you see some of the most startup type brands like a HelloFresh being incredibly good at that. You see that they are digital natives by heart. Yeah. They are obviously founded, I wouldn't say recently, but if you compare back to some of the big players in the same market, like they are recent. And you see that digital like integration into all channels, whether you're talking to a customer service representative or you're engaging with the website, you're engaging with the app, or even if you're canceling your subscription, you're getting a very unified message, and they're kind of approaching you as the individual that you are. Yeah.
Got it. So let's wrap up. I think, what we've talked about, we've covered a lot of ground. I think this is fair to say that this is, now that the 30-day shock is over, now we're sort of well beyond 30 days. This is really an opportunity, right, for brands and retailers to refocus, understand kind of the challenges that are in front of them, pivot, right? Make sure that the resources are put in place, especially around customer retention and digital experience and the consumer life cycle and the barriers that we were talking about, and make the business work now, because we're slowly coming out of this. They want to be well positioned to not only, just get through this, but thrive, right? Now thrive competitively and position themselves to win now that they've got this kind of recalibration taking place, right? Now, this is the opportunity to take the right action, make sure you're investing in the retention programs that you need, make sure you have the right content to deliver that messaging, and that you're delivering relevant and meaningful messaging across every touch point in the customer journey. And that's what I'm hearing from you as well, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I think the most important tactic to take on would be re-engagement in general. Does that come from having a powerful and robust loyalty solution? For sure. It also comes from just having like the correct marketing automation strategy in place. Absolutely. I think going forward, like the notion of customer acquisition, the importance of that may decrease for a lot of brands. And I think they're going into red alert mode around like retaining the existing customers they have to make sure they're not even allowing for a market shift to occur. I think the average cost of like an acquisition going forward will increase simply because hesitation is going to be around and we're moving into a different economic going forward. And that's why I think the effect you're getting from re-engagement is just simply going to be better value for the money.
Awesome. Well, Casper, you've been terrific, provided a lot of great insight. Obviously, Valtech is one of our pioneers in systems integration and partner solutions. And this is why we do this. We come together as partners to support our clients and prospects. Everything that we do now related to market movers, Annex Cloud market movers. We have the video chat series there. Where can people, best, find Valtech besides the website? They can find you on LinkedIn, but is there a particular piece of thought leadership that we should be mindful of, that we should tell people about, or anything else kind of in this kind of new normal that we should direct people to so that they can easily find it with Valtech?
Yeah, so we're obviously very active on LinkedIn. We're publishing a ton of thought leading content, both around like the COVID situation and what that means to both like manufacturers and retail, basically all verticals and industries. Obviously, all that content can also be accessed on valtech.com. There is a section dedicated for insights where you can go in and kind of understand what we as consultants mean that companies need to do right now.
Awesome. Thanks, Casper. Well done. Really appreciate it. And let's do this again soon, okay?
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Take care.